Hey everyone, water is wet and fire gets hot. And those who benefit from big government initiatives or forced wealth and income redistribution seem to be much happier in support of those initiatives than those who are on the other side or the flip side of those equations. Those who are forced to pay for them against their will. Shocking revelation, right? Well, at least that last part. The water being wet and fire being hot, that's pretty obvious and undeniable. But hey, at the end of the day, so is the very real fact that those who benefit from big government always comprise those who support it. So no real shocking revelations here, folks. Just a big old dose of reality. Headline out of CBC News, Nova Scotia. New Canadians more optimistic than the rest of the country, poll suggests. Newcomers are more likely to trust the government to do what's right and don't worry as much about corruption. This being reported by Kayla Horsell, July 4th, 2019. As he stands behind the counter greeting customers in his Halifax restaurant, Muntader Naji insists he could not be happier. He exemplifies the Canadian dream. A new Canadian that's only new here is someone who represents the Canadian dream, not those who actually live and reside, who grew up in this country. No, it takes a newcomer to Canada, an immigrant or a refugee, to show you what being Canadian is all about these days. In particular, under the Trudeau Liberals. Or Stephen Harper, for that matter. Because, yeah, don't get things too twisted, folks. The Libcons are very much closely aligned as far as their policy positions. Make no mistake about that. Originally from Iraq, Naji came to Canada as a refugee 10 years ago. He got a job in a barber shop, and then he bought the barber shop. Well, damn, they must have been paying really good at that barber shop, right? Wow, to get a job at a barber shop and then to be able to go out and just buy the barber shop? That's an impressive feat, I must admit. He's now the owner of 3 businesses. He has also since sponsored his wife to come over, and they have 2 Canadian-born children. So this guy went from, I guess being one of these poor immigrants that Canadians would just have to force to take in, to adopt, and to help in some way. And boy, did we ever, because geez, it turns out now this person owns 3 businesses in this country. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of Canadians that haven't even got to own their first business in this country. But like the article suggested, hey, to live the Canadian dream, well, you don't want to be old stock Canadian, that's for sure. We have everything we need here, he said. We have electricity. It's a safe country. The people. That's all opportunities, I think. A new poll commissioned by CBC News shows that new Canadians, those who have been in the country 10 years or less, are much more likely to be optimistic about the future than the general population. That's quite the divide there, right? Gee, I wonder why old stock Canadians aren't feeling so optimistic or happy about this situation. Could it have had anything to do with the fact that they're the ones that are being forced to pay for all this? Or to subsidize their competition in the marketplace? Such as this gentleman or this family? Maybe. I'd say a fairly high probability as far as I'm concerned. New Canadians are also more likely to be somewhat interested in politics than other Canadians, the poll says. And they're much more likely to say the country is on the right track, trust the government to do what's right, and to say that they don't think corruption is a problem in Canadian politics. Right. It's ignorant and naive, right? Yeah, they're new. So that shouldn't be a shocker either. What's more, the poll says, new Canadians say they don't have enough information about Conservative leader Andrew Scheer and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. They think the Green Party is too radical for me, and they have a high regard for Liberal leader Justin Trudeau. No mention of Maxine or the PBC. And you know that's done on purpose, folks. Especially when you know that they're bringing in the Green Party in the equation. I mean, the PPC already has more founding members and supporters than the Green Party, but yet they still remain in obscurity. And why? Because they wouldn't fit along with this narrative that's being put forward and presented by this CBC personality. I mean, the fact that they have high regard for Justin Trudeau isn't paying for shit, right? He's just virtue signaling. Why give him the credit for the lowly wage slaves and serves this country being forced to prop up and pay for Justin Trudeau's virtue signaling? That's the world we live in, folks. you better get used to it. Or, here's a shocking thought, you could try to change things and stop supporting the status quo or the ruling establishment. Hey, just a suggestion. The last point is a sentiment that rings true for the Najib family. We love him, Najib's wife, Sabrine said of Trudeau, sitting beside her husband in their Halifax apartment. We love him. We support him. He helped a lot of refugees, Najib added. No, he didn't do shit. Najib? No, sorry, no, Trudeau didn't do shit other than put a gun to the rest of our heads, metaphorically, and force us to bring you here, to subsidize you, to sustain you on the public dole for as long as need be. And most Canadians never signed up or agreed to that. You might want to take that into the equation and start thinking about that more critically as you praise Justin Trudeau. According to the poll, the top 3 issues New Canadians say are important to them are finding a job, having previous credentials recognized, and the speed of immigration when it comes to processing other family members. Isa Al-Hariri, a dentist who came to Canada as a refugee from Syria in 2016, agrees with that finding wholeheartedly, but he is not quite so optimistic on all fronts. Al-Hariri and his wife have 6 children, including twin baby girls born in Canada. He says he has been working hard to have his dentistry credentials recognized so that he can provide for his family, but the process is long. After 3.5 years in Canada, he still doesn't have a job. A fact he's embarrassed to admit. I used to be very successful in my practice as a dentist. I used to work for the Ministry of Health in Syria, help others. Now I feel like I'm in need, and I'm under this help, Al-Hariri said. He's quick to point out how grateful he is for his life in Canada, but admits he thought he would be supported more in terms of the process to become a dentist here. If you help these people, they will contribute to the economy, to their communities, instead of being under community services, consuming these resources, he said of refugees. So obviously this person is still 3.5 years later living off the productive fruits and efforts and labor of the working poor in this country, or the future success of generations and the unborn who are forced and thrust to pay for all these big government initiatives, for Justin Trudeau's virtue signaling, not just in Canada, but on the global stage. Anyways, I'll post a link to this article in the description of the video below. I just want to point out once again, folks, that this is the kind of feel-good messaging that the hacks of the CBC are trying to put out there and present. It's all about, oh, we're supposed to be all happy and supportive of these immigrants who are being treated like first-class travelers, while the Canadian tax serfs and wage slaves, well, they're being treated like tax serfs and wage slaves to pay for all this. So yeah, there's definitely a glaring divide. And while CBC will promote that as a good thing, because their spin is all about promoting those positive benefits for new Canadians or the immigrants or the illegal asylum seekers come to this country, they're not quite willing to acknowledge and recognize the flip side of that, which represents the detriment and the social and economic hardships that old stock Canadians have imposed or thrust upon them as a consequence of this stuff. I mean, come on, Canada. The Great Divide is pretty evident and glaringly obvious. And if you haven't noticed it yet, it's because you're either not paying attention or you're going along with the rhetoric or the narrative or the stance taken by those who are your thought leaders or opinion makers, such as these CBC personalities. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.